Welcome to Stardust Stories. Stories to help your child believe in themselves and have a blissful night's sleep.
We hope you enjoy this story, designed to soothe and relax anyone, especially those who would like to have a good night's sleep. Let's go to a world full of fun and silly things, where we can imagine anything and anything can happen before we fall asleep.
Okay, ready? Let's start. Here's Chester the Kookaburra. It was a typical hot, sunny morning in the Australian Outback. The bright light glistened off the gum tree leaves, and the wattles swayed gently in the breeze. The air filled with squeaks, warbles, and laughter of lorikeets, cockatoos, and kookaburras, as all the native animals of Jumbuck Scrub gathered around the Billabong for breakfast. Pete the platypus skimmed the rocks of a pond, looking for any juicy morsel he could find. He was famished. Delilah, the dingo, licked her paws as she confidently overlooked her domain. Her tummy was quickly full from breakfast, so all she could do was laze around in the summer sun. Above her perched Chester the Kookaburra. He was sitting on his favorite branch spinning yarns to his friends Karl, Karen, and Kosmo Kookaburra. "And that's how Larry the lorikeet surfed the back of Wally the whale," he chuckled, telling his favorite story that always got a laugh from his friends. Chester was known all over Australia for his laughter and sense of humour, and he was happy to take advantage of that fact at every opportunity. "Oh, Chester, you're so funny," giggled Karl. "We love hearing that story, even for the 100th time," said Karen and Kosmo together. They all laughed, alarming a nearby flock of corellas into flight. "All this yarn spinning has made me hungry. I'm off to find breakfast," squawked Chester, as he took off in flight in search of his favorite meal that was always hard to find, a witchetty grub. "Come back for 11sies and spin us another yarn," shouted Karl as he waved his left wing goodbye to Chester. "Sure," answered Chester, "and if I'm not back in 3 days, send a search party." His friends laughed in reply. Chester felt on top of the world. He loved his friends, and he loved to entertain them. Over the Billabong Chester flew, across the fields where Chris the kangaroo lived, and around Walter the wallaby's secret spot that wasn't really a secret, because everyone knew where it was. Over gum trees, bottle brushes, and silky oaks he glided. Many hours later, he reached Lunchtime Layout, a kind of outback cafe full of any meal a native Australian animal could hope for, especially the famed kakadu cake that got the native animals in a tiz. As Chester chomped on his witchetty grub, he looked around in pleasure. "What's that in the distance?" he muttered to himself as he saw someone walking towards him. "Oh my word. It's Nullarbor Nellie. No one has ever seen Nullarbor Nellie. I must tell my friends," he said to himself as he quickly flew back to Jumbuck Scrub. "I hope they believe me," he thought along the way. As he arrived back on the branch where his friends perched, Karl looked at him in surprise. "You're back, Chester. What happened?" "I saw Nullarbor Nellie. I saw Nullarbor Nellie. Nullarbor Nellie," said Chester excitedly, barely catching his breath. "Struth, Chester. We all know Nullarbor Nellie doesn't exist. She's just an old wives' tale," squawked Karen. "You're such a kidder," chuckled Kosmo. They all laughed, except for Chester, who was disappointed his friends didn't believe him. "I'm telling the truth," said Chester. "Why don't you believe me?" he questioned. "You're so funny, Chester. We never know if you're telling the truth," said Karl. "It's just another one of your elaborate yarns," replied Kosmo. They laughed again. Chester lowered his beak and flew off, feeling even more disappointed. "I'm going to find Gus the Goanna," he said. "He'll believe me." Off Chester flew in search of his friend. Soon Chester reached the humble home of Gus the Goanna, a small hole in a boab tree. Inside the tree, Gus sat on an old Australian pine rocking chair while reading the Finance and Banking Review in front of a flickering fire. Gus was an old, wise goanna. He'd been around long enough to know what was true and what was false. "Gus, Gus, I saw Nullarbor Nellie, Nullarbor Nellie," explained Chester. "Nullarbor Nellie, hey," said Gus, slowly peering over his thickly framed reading glasses. "Yeah. And my friends don't believe I saw her," said Chester. "Don't believe you, hey," said Gus as he turned a page. Gus rocked in his chair a few times, keeping Chester in suspense. "Well, what do you think?" spurted Chester, unable to contain himself any longer. Gus slowly turned another page. Chester began to think he was wasting his time. "Well, I believe you," said Gus, "for I have seen Nullarbor Nellie myself." Chester gasped in surprise, almost falling off his perch. He knew Nullarbor Nellie existed, but after what his friend said, he didn't think anyone would believe him. I knew it, exclaimed Chester. "She does exist, but what shall I do, Gus?" "Well, whatever anyone says or thinks, we know Nullarbor Nellie exists." Chester thanked Gus over and over, then flew back to Jumbuck Scrub. He didn't know what to do, but he did know he wanted to keep spinning yarns his friends loved to hear. Pretty soon the air was filled with the sounds of kookaburra laughter again, as Chester continued to tell his stories. Days passed. Any thought of Nullarbor Nellie had all but disappeared. Then one sunny, quiet day, Chester and his friends were sitting, as usual, on their favourite branch, overlooking the scrub. "What's that in the distance?" asked Karen the Kookaburra, as she saw someone walking towards her. Everyone looked to where Karen pointed her beak, but no one could see due to the blinding light of the summer sun. Then suddenly, It's Nullarbor Nellie!" Nullarbor Nellie smiled and stopped in front of Chester, and he instantly thought of 1,000 questions he wanted to ask her. Everyone was stunned. "Are you the kookaburra I saw at lunchtime layout the other day?" Nullarbor Nellie asked. "Yep, it's me. In the flesh and feathers," chuckled Chester. "Well, I just wanted to come over and say g'day," said Nellie in a friendly way. "You were telling the truth after all," screeched Karl, Kosmo, and Karen in unison. The surprised look on their faces was worth 1,000,000 witchetty grubs, and Chester couldn't help but chuckle. "Join us for a cup of billy tea?" asked Kosmo. "I'd love to," said Nullarbor Nellie. "I'm drier than the Gibson Desert in February." "We're going to believe you in future," admitted Chester's friends. "We may be famous for our laughter, but boy, can we spin a yarn now." Thank you for listening to another fun, silly and sleepy story from Stardust, Bedtime Stories for Kids. Sweet dreams, and we will see you next time. Nighty night.